Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Coach K, and this is the new year, 2026. And I have always said that I was going to do videos, and we are going to do a curriculum with videos, and it will be to be announced within very soon. Our curriculum is going to be Sundays for the Bible study. We did that. Today is Monday, January the 5th, and we are going to do our topic for today is business for those that are business enthusiasts. And we are excited to introduce transformative leadership business, which is a little different from social entrepreneurship, but we are excited to introduce it to you all, and hopefully this will be a blessing to you. And for those that don't know who I am a scholarly practitioner, which means I got more than enough degrees. People are like, you don't need education. So let me give you my disclaimer. I believe in training. I've always been a training or life learner. So education is that for me. It's a personal training type of concept for me. I go there and my professors are my mentors. My professors are my personal trainers for mental horizons or mental advancements, right? I love learning and critiquing, not so much, but who does? Like when you do exercise, who likes to be critiqued? Corrected all the time on your form, right? And technique. But the beautiful God-made magic that comes out of it, or energy or power, it's phenomenal. It's a phenomenon. And so with that said, I went back to school and got educated and did a couple of disciplines, and here I am. Does it make me better or worse? No, it just makes me with more ammunition. I call it more tools in my belt. So more power to work with. So I'm very thankful for that. I can't even imagine how many professors have trained me and educated me over the years and mentored me, probably in the hundreds. That's how many courses I've taken, earned some great experience, some A work, B work, C work, D work, and I've earned some F's. So I've been all over the board, depending on where I am in life. And so tomorrow, though, is our academia talk. So I'm going to jump in, I was giving my credentials to be able to have a discussion about business. I have a business science degree, so MBA. So I can talk about business and teach about business and even build curriculums around business. And so I've done some doctorate coursework as well in business leadership, business science, business management, and business administration. So I could talk about stuff as that. So let's dive into this, okay? And so we're not going to do any type of work online like I did with the Bible study. Today it's just going to be just a conversation, and then we'll start developing, some virtual work where I'll take you on some research about business, who to contact, who to connect with and such. Today is just give you kind of the scenery, right? For those that want to frame your life around business. Okay. A lot of people say, if only I knew the business side. I remember athletes entertainers from our previous generations would trust the people that came in their life to take care of the business side. And they would not be able to be the critical thinker, or the person that, the CEO, the founder, the person that says, okay, you did your job. Thank you. And let me look over your work. That's where academia comes in, where you come in and say, hey, I'm the teacher. I'm going to grade your work. Here's what I have as goals. This is what I was wanting. Looks good. This looks good. This looks good. You got A work. Check. This is my goal. You've helped me achieve my goal. I see your formulas. I see your math, and I now will file it so I can have it in my archive system. So if I want to look over it and look at it, I can audit it. I can examine it. I can assess it. I can evaluate it. And that is what a CEO or founder do when they hire a team to help them get the work done. And so when you think of business, you think of specialties. We call it in college, disciplines. But for the business sake, we call departments, right? Departments, branches, or I call it task force. So when you build your team, and I love using athleticism because I spent over 25 years in sports. And so I'm very, very much passionate about sports. I'm passionate about the church. I'm passionate about following Christ, learning about Christ. I'm very passionate about spirit science. So there's a lot of layers to my personality and to my education and experience. So if you see some symbolism that comes from athleticism, then you'll understand I'm a big lover of sports and athleticism. And so let's dive into some of these examples and illustrations that bridge the gap for business. People say, hey, business is about employees. I am taking business to another theoretical framework. I'm saying, see your business as a team. You have a team. You do no longer have employees. You no longer have slaves. You no longer have servants. You now have team players that are leaders. Every single person that you bring on your team, whether it's entry level, which is the base of your company, or the management level or the executive level, which I call it the leadership, right? The organization's leadership team. But in my mind, it's leadership to leadership. So your entry level or your employees, or whether they're vendors, whether they're contractors, or whether they're self-employed, I call free agents. They are all leaders in their own right because they have a skill and you are hiring them to do that skill. Even if you're training them, even if you're providing educational opportunities for them, it doesn't matter. They're an expert when they do that work. You trust them enough to do the work and be satisfied with the work they do. And when you're not satisfied with the work they do, you give them a personal trainer, a mentor, or a team to help them acclimate to the level you would want them to perform as a high performer. And so when you talk about business in life in general, or business in your home life, or business in what we call the business market, right? You have to realize that we're no longer in the framework, right, of the past, of traditions. We're no longer doing the mindset of slaves or servants or in what people call subordinates, right? That terminology, that way of thinking is what we now consider inappropriate and unhealthy. So if you practice those things, you're in the red zone of business, okay? The yellow zone of business, which means you're not going to be profitable for long term, or it means you're not healthy and fit to produce because you're practicing and cutting corners, right? You cut corners and you're not doing best practices, right? And you have poor quality of ethics, right? But you still are legal. We call this a yellow zone of business practice, right? And then the green zone practice is when you understand that you are an ecosystem in the universe, and your actions is a rippling effect, like a domino effect, like a snowball effect, right? And so your team has the opportunity to be healthy, to be leaders, to be promoted, to have profit sharing, to be equal to your life and lifestyle, if not greater. And depending on your team and how they are in their mindsets, they understand the same thing about profit sharing and green zone, that no one gets left behind and everyone can be in alignment with each other. When you think of soccer, you think about alignment. When you think about football, you're thinking about an alignment. When you think about basketball, you're thinking about an alignment. Teams have to be in an alignment with each other to perform in a high level. The least to the greatest, to the bench warmers, the A team, the B team, it doesn't matter. The tail and the head has to be in alignment. The left hand and the right hand have to be in alignment, and so forth. So same thing with business. For those that want to get into business, you start with your team. The reason why you start with your team is because without an ecosystem, without a village, or without a household, this means without a team, it will be very hard. Two heads is better than one. So a team, 5 minds is better than one. Even though you might be a genius, an island on your own mountain or your own country, you still would need 2 mindsets better than one. That's just as a couple, as a partnership. But as a team, the minimum is 5, right? A team sport, the minimum is 5. So here is what it looks like. For those that are interested in building a team in business, before you can get to your financial department on how to build your finances and how to make money, monetize it, be capitalist society, you got to start with the grassroots, which is volunteer, service learning, which giving back, which means building relationships, building your idea of what market is, who your audience is, who your consumers are, and who are the people that's going to be loyal to you, and what in the exchange relationship you need with them, or reciprocity, or reciprocate the relationship. I like to call it the double swing continuum by a very famous scholar. You can do your homework. So when you develop one step, and that is your team, you got to think about 2 things: the skills, right? The performance, how they implement their performance. And then the second one is the big one, the personality. That means the commitment. Personality and commitment is one. Work ethics, right? So you have the skills, the anointing, the talent, right? Or just the functionality, the ability to do a skill. It doesn't have to have a talent, and you don't have to be perfect, right? If you show up, you 10 out of 10 right there, showing up and doing the skill. Whereas someone that's talented do not show up and there is no skill at the table. So these are the things that comes with team building. When you are in business, you have a product and you have a service, and then you have your leadership style. These 3 things comes with your team, right? When you think of team, you got to say, oh, what is my leadership style? How do I interact with my team? How do I interact with my consumers? How do I interact with the stakeholders? How do I interact with those that are interested in becoming loyal to me, the product, the service, and to the team, and to the communities that we live in, right? This is all what starts off with building your mission statement, your goals. A lot of people are saying, well, business plan is all of these things, and they have these traditions where business plans becomes like very, very comprehensive, very detail oriented. And sometimes you got to hire experts that do this 40 hours a week, because then they'll know how to do the layers. But just to do a functionality business plan is like goal setting. You lay out the goals that you showed the person that you had a thought, and you did everything. You do your math. You took the thought and put it from the beginning to the end. You know what you're doing about implementation. It's almost like a recipe book. I call it the recipe book, because when you think of a recipe book, you think about a meal. You want to be able to get a good recipe that Even though they're the expert in that recipe, they know how to break it down in a way to make you the expert of the recipe. The unfortunate thing about this is that when you do business plans or you share your ideas and you make it so well, break it down so well like a recipe, people have a tendency to borrow it, take it, and be inspired by it, whether duplicate it as a copy or they kind of tweak it and adjust it and make it their own. And that's what you find in a lot of these companies. They don't value partnerships or collaboration. Like, oh, this is great. Let us do it together and give you a little percentage, like what we call residual income or royalty for being a contributor to advancing our vision. That's what we call a green zone company. We don't have many of those anymore, but we never did, if you know the systematic processes of racism, sexism, and classism. We only had it for a small group of people. So doing something different is changing the mindset, right? To be more inclusive. You start with your leadership style, how you're going to conduct your actions, right? And one of the ways is when you do partnerships, you create your goal. Your goal is your product, your service. Some services includes educational purpose curriculums, right? Some services include therapy or treatment or holistic healing, health, personal training, right? Some, services provide cooking, hospitalities, culinary, right? So you have this world of markets with industries like entertainment, parks, recreation, right? I can go on, right? It's over millions of businesses, and you can see them as little ecosystems, right? Little nations. I call it little nations, right? Micro nations. They don't call that because some businesses do not run as nationality or nation, multi-nations. And what does that mean when you're a nation building community is when you are holistically conscious of people's well-being. And that's how our governments are supposed to be about, is to build a business that is conscious of every single person on their team. When you think of sports, professional sports, they make sure everyone on their team is a millionaire. Everyone that gets signed in to the NBA is considered equal, a millionaire. There might be a $1 millionaire versus $100 million millionaire, but they're all in the same class of social economics. They're millionaires, right? You have some that are six figures, but because of their endorsements and their sponsorships and their assets, they're considered as a millionaire, right? So you don't have that. It would be nice to have that across the board where all companies are green zone that chooses an ecosystem that is social economics the same. But they don't do that. They do the bare minimum. They cut corners 90% of the time. They try to pay their wages the lowest that sometimes is even under living conditions. So the bare minimum is legal minimum wage. Sometimes that is under the living conditions of their ecosystem or their social economics. And so that is a problem. Let me use an example. The government got minimum wages. So if you go to any of your government departments and you interact with the employees, you literally can be having a conversation with an employee that is homeless because they cannot afford the living conditions of their community, but yet they have a job and they get a paycheck, but their paycheck is so small. And because the economy of that culture, that government culture, doesn't provide them access to assets, to, security, they're outside of their social economics for that government system. Same thing with corporate America. There's some corporations that pay their employees under their social economics. And so they have a way of living, and then they got employees that are not part of that. So this is where they're no longer green zone environments. They're either yellow zone, which I would call most 90% of businesses, which is inclusive of governments, corporations, institutions, medical, institutions, educational institutions, right? Anything and everything you can think of under the sun, I call a business in a business market. Okay, whether it's nonprofit or profit, 90% is in yellow zone, where about 10% is red zone. Okay, and people are saying, what about the green zone? The green zone is 0.01%. Very small, little sliver, call it like a mustard seed. You have a remnant. And why is that? Why is it that the smallest percentage is green zone? Why isn't that the largest percentage? Because a lot of businesses are self-preserved, preservation. They do not want to focus and invest equally to their team. See, they don't see their employees as a team. They see their employees as what? People that is investing in their dream. Their dream, the corporate or the executive team or the founding team. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be everyone investing each other's dream, right? That's what makes it a community, a culture. You invest in each other's dream. That's why there's a lot of conversation about hip hop culture, because they were leading, like trailblazing into building what we call a global iconic historical culture that was a community where they were supposed to be lifting everyone up. But because of the harsh reality of money and the need for quality of life, it was lost somewhere, lost in social values, lost in lyrical values, right? This is the same that happens in business. Hip hop culture is a great example of how to be lost. 90% of our business culture is lost in the yellow zone. I'll call that the quicksand zone. Okay. You cut corners. You don't want to put that extra mile to do the back and forth exchange of each and every team player. Okay. You have employees, whether they're independent contractors, whether they're free agents, whether they're vendors, you're paying them to make sure, whether it's outsourcing or not, you're including people that have their own vision, their own families, their own ecosystems, their own legacies, and they want that as well. So that's called multitasking, right? So that's why I call this as leadership to leadership model. And how does that work, right? You sit down and have leadership meetings that says, hey, do you have ownership of a home? Do you have ownership of real estate? Do you have ownership of a goal? Do you have an ownership of a future goal? Do you have ownership of a community building goal? Do you have an ownership of team building goal? Who's your team? What is your product and what is your services? If you cannot have those kind of conversations with your team, or you don't have those answers with your team, then you're in the yellow zone, the quicksand zone of business. Okay, so this today is about the overview of what is really business. People think business is just for profit, but even in the for-profit ecosystem, you still have the wealth and richness of profit sharing. What does profit sharing mean? It means make sure your team is fit for leadership in their respective community in their respective position of power, of expertise, right? Of task, whether it's an assignment. See, I don't like using the word task unless it's for task force, right? It could be assignment, right? It could be position, what they perform in, right? It's not about productivity, it's about performance. And performance means legacy. Everyone should be walking out of that culture, that community, not just with financial, right, prosperity, but as well as legacy, generational wealth for their own communities. That's the leadership to leadership model, right? In business. So when you think about music business, you think about medical business, all these business, education as a teacher business, you think about team sports in business, right? You have the medical industry. You have a team that performs, and the audience is those that critique your work, whether you did a good job or not, to your patients. And that's where you get your reviews. That's your spectators, right? This is all what we're coming down to one thing: financials, right? How do you keep records in a timely manner because you have deadlines, right? How you make points, that's profit. How do you make resources? You don't have to call it profit for nonprofit. Nonprofit is called resource sharing, and for-profit is called points. How do you get victory? How do you get win-win solutions? That's called mediation. These are conflict resolution conversations. How do you move through in a inevitable changing world? How do you stay adaptable without cutting corners and going bankruptcy? That is connectivity. In business, it's called connectivity. In sports, it's called influence, fan base, right? How well you connect to the world, whether you're an executive all the way to the performance, the free agent, or the contracted agent, an agency. Okay? After the age of 18, no matter if you are registered or not, you're considered as a agency, free agency or contracted agency, right? Whether employed or self-employed or business owner. It's all the same as agency in business, the market. Everyone can be a contribution. Even if you're disabled, even if you don't work and you do service learning and you do volunteerism, you still have a contribution. Did you know the United States government receives over $1 trillion worth of service from volunteers, those that come in for free and provide free agency to the United States of America through what? Government or nonprofits, sometimes even corporations. If you look at their books, when they underpay people, they're donating the hours where they are competitively getting without wages. So if you get paid $4 an hour and another group of people get paid $8 an hour, $4 of those hours, $4 of those $8 is donated to that company. So you might as well put on your books, you gave $4 of donation to the company you are with. That's what we called profit sharing. But because a lot of people are not aware, we call it conscious building, educated to know how to build their life agency into a business, your companies are not seeing your value because you're accepting under wages. So if you're worth your skill, not you as a person, you're priceless, right? But your skill is considered as a commodity a product, right? A service, and you sell it for $4, which whatever is the minimum wage, let's go to $10. So the minimum wage is $10, right? But you look it up and you see all around the world, there's different numbers for that skill. You got the highest and you got the lowest, and you're say in the between. So let's say the lowest in another country is like $2 according to US currency. And let's say in the wealthiest communities, the highest is, let's say, $40. And let's say you get $10. So now you have to do the math. You got all these numbers. So the average is probably $10 to $15. And the competitive is probably $20 to $30. And the high performers are $40 an hour. Okay. Now you have to ask yourself, that skill, how much is it worth? So let's say we're going to say in the perfect world, in a green zone world, your skill across the board is worth $40 an hour if your company makes so much money. That's how we would do a social responsible indicator. If your company makes $6 billion and they only pay you $10 for that skill, they're underpaying you. So you are worth $40 an hour for that skill. So that means you're donating $30 to that company. So you have to what? Record that. And at the end of the year, you have to put that in a report that you've given $30 worth of volunteer work per hour. How many hours? If you work 40 hours a week, that's $30 times 40. Right there, you have to calculate those hours per year. And I'm pretty sure you've donated over probably $40,000 worth of work. If you are working for a corporation like Walmart, right? Big billion-dollar corporations like Nike, and you're getting minimum to no wages. Then you get underpaid and you wonder why you cannot afford your own property, pay off ownership, right? Cars, what do you call it? Travel around the world expenses, medical expenses, and retirement, because you've donated more than half of your wages. If you get $10 and you're $40, that's more than half you're donating to that corporation. That's social responsibility. That's corporate social responsibility to know those numbers and to adjust your wages so that, one, either you can afford a house because they have some type of corporate program that allows house ownership through their credit line. So you don't have to worry about credit, or they give you $40 an hour and you build your own credit and buy your own house. So let's say, hey, Dr. Coach K, we're not a corporate that makes billions. What about us that makes pennies? Well, I remember as a child, we had a church that literally took up offerings and people tithed their pennies. So pennies, I remember presidents asking for $1, sometimes cents, 5 cents, 10 cents, right? After 1 million people giving 10 cents, that's a couple of 100,000. So this is where you come in. You come in building on pennies, right? Building off of pennies is not easy when you have competition. So how do you stand out? How do you build in a competitive world? You go out there and build relationships and partnerships, and you can transform those pennies into nickels and quarters and dimes and dollars or credit lines. Okay. You have a product, you have a service, you have a skill. Those are commodities equal to credit line loans, and funding. You just got to know how to use it. But that's all business. All of those things are commodities, not just gold, not just things in the dirt, in the earth like oil. There's human commodity, human capital. In the traditions of the old days, they called it slavery and servitude. In the new days, it's called competition. It's called agency. It's called free agency. It's called contracted agency, where you use your skills, your energy, your presence, anything. Because, security is presence. You got to be able to able to monitor things and observe things, the way you perceive things in an environment. It's called security. People get paid excellent money doing one thing, and that's observation and being ready to respond to that observation. So not everything has to do with what I call physical, mentally, emotional skills. You have social skills, you have spiritual skills, right? And you have spectator skills, where you observe and get paid excellent money to observe, like reviews or participation. It's a matter of implementation. My my business mentor, Dr. J, he used to say all the time, the biggest strategy of all strategy is the mastery of implementation. That is the key to success and high performing success. I'm saying in order to become a green zone successful business, you have to be a master in not just implementation, but connectivity, connections, how to connect with everyone on your team, everyone in your fan base, which is your stakeholders, because they invest in you, in your vision, and you invest in them because what you provide them builds their life. That's why they do it. That's why they're connected to you. They don't do it because they don't like you. Very few invest in people that they don't like, but it's very rare, right? But it happens because they want to be nosy. They're curious. They want to see your demise. So they'll be willing to pay to see your demise. So there is some level of connectivity even with your enemies or those that hate you, right? It says, blessed those that are what? Against you. Because why? Because they have part in investing in you somehow. But there's always safe space. That's called security and safety. And it's on the Abraham Maslow's model of need assessment, demand assessment, motivational assessment. So what does that look like? I'm going to wrap this up. But what does that look like? It looks like business has three major components. Money, which is resource, right? And I like to even go currency, energy, because in the 21st century, you need more than just financial, because millionaires can go out there and be hoarders and squanders of their money and get nothing done in their whole lifetime for generations, right? What do I mean by nothing done? Meaning they don't resolve death. They don't resolve the planet disabilities. They don't resolve the planet's injuries. They don't resolve community injuries, damage, none of that. And so they still have their own demise. They have not recovered from death. You have the whole spiritual science of death, which is people without bodies, right? They're working on how do I become manifested in a body again? Because if you believe that life never dies, the life essence is always living, then that means the body is either what? Transformed, or they need new bodies, but they're still alive. So if you even use that on a spiritual level, whether you're atheist or not, The belief system still remains the same. You can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have the right strategy, having all the money in the world is useless. Being mean to people, trying to self-preserve you, all of that is in vanity for those that are aggressive. For those that are passive, it's useless if you don't have the right strategy. When the day comes, the appointment comes that you have to resolve the conflict of death. That's the last conflict. You can resolve all the conflicts in life and not be ready for the conflict of death because of the lack of connectivity, right? So how do you resolve those things in business? Well, there's that old saying, practice makes perfect. You continue to do good technique and you practice good technique, it leads you to what? Resolving big conflicts appropriately, social responsibly, corporate social responsibly, right? And you do that so many times, when the time comes to resolve big injuries, big decay, those are all conflicts according to business. Everything is a conflict when it comes to business, and how to build solutions like chemistry. You got to do it appropriately, and that's called green zone. No cutting corners. That's called mathematically correct. No cutting corners. No cheating. No hiding. No running from it. But practicing good skills, building and developing the muscle, mental muscle, emotional muscle, the social muscle, the physical muscle to overcome, to transcend, to transform, to adapt, to adjust, so that the results is what? A win-win for all parties, all variables. The environment, which is the ecosystem, which is the planet, to the people that interact with it, to the other species, which is plant life, animal life, and all the unseen and seen species, right? So why do I do a holistic approach to business? Because many business owners, business enthusiasts don't think about these variables, but mathematically they all exist when you do business. So you have your three major themes in business. I call them three major players in business. That is the resources, how you interact, right? What you use to interact, right? That's what I'm calling resources holistically. Your team, and the way you conduct yourselves, code of conduct. And that's your personality, your leadership style. So we're going to call it leadership style, because everyone's a leader. If you're in business, everyone's a leader, even children. If they start performing as a business, a free agency, that means discipline to get up and do a routine and to sell products and services. That's business, whether it's a penny or as an exchange, commodity to commodity, because commodities are considered currency. It doesn't matter. Business doesn't always mean dollars and cents. It doesn't mean competitive currency like profit. Business is when you have to get up in the morning and sell your product or your service to survive. That's business. Business sport, meaning team sport, is when you have a team of people that is working together to pull together in compilation, like a library, in a collective consciousness of products and services, because each person comes with a skill, talent, and craft to sell, which means exchange in a way to not just survive, but to excel, to advance together without harm. That's a green zone, without harm. Business is with or without harm. Business ethics, business integrity, business professionalism, and business responsibility and social responsibility, corporate responsibility, government responsibility, all falls under accountability. That is called green zone business. So, say it one more time. 3 main themes. Resources, we call it currency. Holistic approach to currency. Team building, which is leadership to leadership. Everyone has a position equally, because you can't have any inferiority. You can't have any superiority, because everybody at the end of the day has to be able to pull you out of the sand, out of the quicksand. You got to be able to pull them out of quicksand. They got to be able to pull you out of quicksand, whether it's in a strategy, whether it's a goal, and they have to have the discipline to do it. So everyone is reliable, dependable, responsible, and accountable to hold up their position. And then if anything happens at the end of the day, they have to be able to stand in an executive order to be able to keep it moving forward if something needs to be done in their name. So that is team building. And the third one, team building, then it's currency, and then it's leadership. Why is leadership last? Because the greatest servant is the greatest leader. You have to be able to serve everyone. Everyone has to be able to serve you. Everyone has to be able to serve each other. Leadership is the mastery of service. Okay? Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, physically, without being burnt out, without being neglected, without being abused or being abusive, without causing harm. Leadership style is that chemistry, that ambience, that energy, that tone, that attitude, that swag, right? That paradigm shift that everyone brings to the table when they're called leaders. I call it the leader that can serve well, to accommodate well, right? That can mediate well, that can be an intercessory well, that can intervene well, right? It's that person that takes the extra mile, that does it excellent, that knows how to exceed the basic, the exceeding process of mastery, of self, of the service. So you have leadership style, you have team building, and you have currency, or the exchange of value. Well, I told myself that I would try to keep these conversations under 1 hour. And I'm so proud of myself. I'm doing it. Yay, me. So until next time we can review different companies, and I could show you how you can vet companies. That's one mission of mine, is to help business enthusiasts to really understand how to build their home life without it being so rigid and so compliant, but how to balance work and play, how to live a life of leisure. That's our topic for Saturday, right? Leisure and recreation without burnout, how to be able to balance it in moderation and still play hard and work hard without being so extreme that you miss out on life on both sides, on both fronts. How do you love your work, and how do you be present in play? So with business enthusiasts, one way to be able to receive that type of lifestyle is to understand the game, the real game. This is Dr. Coach K signing off. One love, much love, peace and blessings.